Welcome back to the channel, and this week features 3 straight days of action-packed poker. Make sure you stay till the end if you want to see my dumbest play of all time.
For the year 2025, I'm trying to make $25 an hour while playing the same amount of hours at both 1-2 and 1-3. This year has been an absolute roller coaster so far, but I'm happy to announce that we've kept up with our goal. For now.
We got off to a horrible start to the year, but from the 11th of February to March 18th, we went on the biggest upswing of our poker career by winning 10 straight sessions for the first time ever and profiting $4,759. We ran super pure, but also pulled off some amazing plays along the way. I was hoping this heater would never stop and last the entire year, but I guess all good things must come to an end. The last week of March was an absolute nightmare. In just 5 hours and 45 minutes of 1-3, we lost $1,444, ending the sun run and bringing us and our unrealistic stats back down to earth. Heading into the month of April, here's where our stats sit. Keep in mind these videos are a little behind because I took a 90-day break to avoid my channel getting terminated, so I'm catching you guys up on my journey by posting twice a week on both Wednesdays and Sundays. We're exactly 25% of the way into the year, and we've played 57 hours and 50 minutes of live poker and profited $1,694 for an hourly win rate of $29.29. We're absolutely crushing the 1-2 streets and barely above the even mark for 1-3. But since our sample size is super small, we can't look too much into it. Truthfully, I'm just happy we're still above our goal of $25 per hour after that horrific ending to March. Hoping April doesn't trend in that direction, but only one way to find out by heading to the nicest card room in Northern California, which is none other than Stone's Gambling Hall. But before we dive into this week's poker sessions, I gotta announce that my weekly online poker meetup games are back. If you want in, message me on Instagram at NorCalPoker. We buy into the 1-2 game for the max of $300, and action gets started right away. Under the gun limps for $2, and a player in early position raises to just $6. In my 5 years of playing poker, I've never seen anyone open a monster hand to such a small sizing over a limp, so I'm putting him on an average hand at best. Action folds to me on the button, and I look down at ace-10 offsuit. Even though this hand is average at best, I still think it's better than most of the early position players' range. I don't want to just flat call and take this hand multi-way, so I try to isolate the early position player and get it heads up by 3-betting to 20. This plan goes right out the window because a super tight player in the small blind puts in the cold call. Like I mentioned in previous vlogs, cold calls to 3-bets are almost always pocket pairs bigger than 7s or Broadway hands and not much else. Action folds to the player in early position and he calls the extra $14, getting an amazing price. Pots increased to $60. We're going 3 ways to a flop of ace-8-6 rainbow, giving us top pair decent kicker. Action checks to me. This is one of those situations where I figure I'm either way ahead or way behind. I'm either up against a bigger ace or a set that has us crushed, or I'm up against a small pocket pair that can't face much heat. Since there aren't any draws available that I need protection from, I decide to check it back and see what develops. Turn peels off the 3 of diamonds, completing the rainbow, and action gets checked to me for a second time. I'm pretty confident I have the best hand now, and like I said earlier, I don't think these guys can face much heat. So I throw out a small value bet of $15, and surprisingly both players put in the chips. Pots now increase to $105, and we're going to a river which peels off the deuce of spades. Checks to me again, and I don't really know what worse hands I could get value from, so I check it back. Small blind is hesitant to show, but ends up rolling over pocket kings, which had me completely shocked. Early position turns over 6-4 clubs for third pair, and we turn over the winner. Just thankful the small blind didn't put in the 4-bet with kings, which allowed us to scoop in this pot. Gotta love morning low stakes poker. For this hand, I decided to throw on the $4 straddle, and action gets folded all the way to the button who just calls the $4. Folds to me, and I look down at the ladies, pocket queens. I throw on an extra $15 to the price, and he puts in the chips. With $40 in the pot, we're going heads up to a flop of ace-6 deuce with 2 hearts, giving us second pair. I figure I'm either way ahead or way behind again, so I start off with a check, and he checks it back, which I love to see. Turn peels off the 10 of spades, making this board a lot more connected. Now it's time to get value. I throw out a bet of $20, targeting draws and one pair holdings weaker than an ace, and he quickly calls, doubling the pot to 80. Hoping for a clean river, and that's exactly what we get in the ace of clubs pairing the ace, making it less likely he has one. I don't think he has much, so I throw out a small value bet of $25 targeting a 10 or a 6, with plans on folding to a river raise. But luckily he ends up putting in the chips for a call, and after I roll over my hand, he mucks right away. I'm off to a great start and looking to keep it going for the rest of the session. Decided to seat change to get a better view for the vlog, and in our first interesting hand in our new spot, I'm in middle position and look down at Jack 10 offsuit. $5 straddle is on, so I decide to raise it to 15. Folds over to the button, who now goes all in for his entire stack of $53. Folds back to me, and I'm obviously not loving this spot, but for just over 10 effective big blinds, I'm never folding, so I put in the extra $38. I turn over my hand like I always do when I'm all in. He rolls over pocket eights, which I was pretty happy to see, because we're basically flipping and in a lot better shape than I was expecting. Flop comes out 7-5-3, which is no help to us. Turn deuce of hearts does nothing, and river 3 of clubs gives our opponent the winner. After burning an extra $25 with ace king offsuit, missing another board completely, we get dealt ace jack of hearts in early position and open the action to $15 over 2 limpers. Just a small blind and first limper put in the call, so with $50 in the pot, the flop comes out ace-6 deuce with 2 clubs, giving us a very solid top pair. Action gets checked to me, and I throw out a standard half pot bet of $25, mainly targeting worse aces and flush draws. Both players end up putting in the chips, which I wasn't expecting, so pot's now up to 125, and since neither player raised, I'm pretty confident I have the best hand. Still going 3 ways to a turn, which comes out the 10 of spades, which shouldn't really change too much. Checks to me again, and I think a value bet is still in order, so I throw out a bet of $65, but now the small blind decides to go all in for over 240. While I'm trying to put him on a range, early position decides to rejam for less, for a total of 115, and now I have to think what I'm up against. I'm not too concerned about the early position player since he most likely has a draw given the action, but the small blind's hand screams he has me beat. Unless you have at minimum top pair top kicker or a redraw to the nuts, I've always been a huge advocate to folding to turn raises. At the low stakes, no one's ever making this play with a hand like ace-5 or ace-9, so most likely I'm up against a set, 2 pair, or at minimum a better ace. So given that, I decide to make the easy laydown and toss my hand in the muck. I keep the camera rolling to see the run out, and the river was a blank and the deuce of hearts. As expected, the small blind ended up having us beat after rolling over ace-queen of spades for a better ace, and the player in early position mucked, so he was probably on a draw. If you keep an eye out for turn or river raises, you'll notice they're almost never a bluff and almost always a monster. After being up over $135 early on, we're now stuck 55, which is not the direction I want to be trending in. Next hand up, I'm in middle position, look down at queen 10 offsuit. The table has been super passive, so I've opened up my raising range to get involved in more pots. So I make it $10 to go, you get called from 5 players, increasing this pot to 60. Anytime you go 6 ways to a flop, especially with an offsuit hand, you have to proceed with major caution. Unless you hit top 2 pair when the flop comes out queen 10 deuce rainbow. Action checks to me, and I never like slow playing these 2 Broadway card flops because there's so many different hands to get value from. So I start off with a bet of $20 expecting to get maybe 1 or 2 customers, but 4 people end up putting in the chips, increasing this pot to $160. We're sitting pretty with top 2. Hoping for a blank, but the turn peels off the 7 of hearts, putting 2 hearts on the board. Checks to me again. I'm not slowing down now. I throw out a bet of $65 targeting queen X, straight draws, and flush draws. It's folded all the way to the big blind, who now goes all in for 170 total. If you remember from last hand, I mentioned how turn raises are almost always monsters and never a bluff, and you should only call if you have minimum top pair top kicker. Well, I have top 2 pair, and I'm never going anywhere for only $105 more, so I put in the chips. Pot's now increased to $500 even, which is pretty massive for a 1-2 game, and I roll over my hand like I always do when I'm all in, he shows a monster hand just as expected in pocket deuces for bottom set. We're in horrible shape and only have 4 outs to win this hand, so we're hoping to use our one time. The dealer throws out the 5 of clubs and we double up our opponent. Don't really think we could have played this hand any different, just have to chalk it up to a cooler and move on. After basically getting stacked, we're forced to add on chips, so I grabbed $300 out of my wallet, and we're now into the game for $600 total. Sucks to be in this spot after being up a decent amount early on, but that's poker for you. Just gotta stick to our game and grind it out. A few hands go by before we're involved in another one. There's 2 limps in the field, and I look down at 10-8 of spades. People who just call pre-flop have a collapsed range, so it's easy to play against them in position with a playable hand. So I make it $15 to go, and both players end up putting in the chips. With $45 in the pot, the flop comes out 3-3 deuce with 2 diamonds, giving us complete air. Checks to me, and even though I have the range advantage, I don't like bluffing 2 people without at least a draw, so I check it back. Turn gives us top pair when the 10 of hearts peels off, and it gets checked to me again. I think I have the best hand now. Since there's a ton of flush and straight draws available, I decide to size up to $30 and just get called from a player in early position. Pots increase to $105, and we're hoping to fade all the red cards in the deck. Unfortunately, the river comes out the 5 of hearts, bringing in the backdoor flush, but luckily our opponent checks it over to us. I think there's 0 value to be had, so I check it back. He rolls over ace-5 offsuit for just a rivered pair, and we scoop in a decent sized pot that can hopefully help us make a comeback. Next hand up, the $4 button straddle is on. Early position opens the action to $10. Folds to me in the hijack, and I look down at the ladies, pocket queens. Never just calling in this spot, so I put in the raise to $30 in position, and surprisingly the button puts in the cold call. This gives the original raiser an amazing price to continue, so he puts in the extra $20. We're going 3 ways to a flop of 10-9-7 all diamonds, giving us the overpair, and a queen high flush draw on a super connected board. Original raiser checks, and I throw out a standard bet of $35 for value. Button quickly folds, and the player in early position calls, increasing this pot to $160. Turn is probably the most action-packed card in the deck, and the 8 of diamonds putting a 4-liner to a straight flush and giving us the queen high flush. Our opponent checks to me again, and now it's decision time. Bet or check it back. My initial thought was to check, but then I realized it's probably best to bet. I could get value from all his straights and 2 pairs, and if he raises me, I know he has me beat. So I continue betting and throw out the same bet of $35 since I don't think a worse hand can call much. And once again, he quickly calls, now bloating the pot up to $230. Hoping for a complete blank so we could just get to showdown, but the river peels off the 8 of spades, pairing the board. Our opponent checks to us for a 3rd time, and at this point, I'm perfectly fine with getting to showdown, so I check it back. He's not too happy I didn't bet because he rolled over 10-8 of clubs for the full house. We had him in pretty bad shape the entire way, but he went runner full house to destroy our plans of making an epic comeback. We played for a bit longer, but couldn't do jack with any of the pocket pairs we picked up, so let's get to the outro.
Not exactly how I wanted to start off the month, but it's hard to win when your big hands don't hold up. In for $600, now for $235 for a $365 loss. Hopefully we could end this losing streak tomorrow.
With yesterday's loss, we're currently on a 3-session losing streak and looking to avoid it going any further. In our first interesting hand of day 2, there's 3 limps in the field and I'm in the big blind and look down at queen jack of hearts. Don't want to just play for $2 with one of the best hands in poker, so I raise it up to 17 and get called from the player to my left in the hijack. Going 3 ways to a flop of ace queen jack rainbow, giving us 2 pair on a super connected board. No point in slow playing this hand, so I throw out a bet of $30 looking to get value from the combo draws and any ace. Just the hijack puts in the call, increasing this pot to $120, and he has around 3/4 of a pot size bet left in his stack. Looking for a safe turn card? That's exactly what we get when it peels off the 3 of diamonds. With only $86 left in his stack, there's only one move, which is all in. I was expecting him to take some time in making his decision, but he ended up snap calling, which is never good. I turn over my hand face up, and He shows ace-3 of spades for a better 2 pair. What we thought was a safe turn card was actually a complete dagger. Pot's now increased to $292. We have 4 outs to try and win this pot, but we completely miss on the deuce of hearts river and double up our opponent. Not the way I was hoping to start off the session after a brutal loss yesterday, so in order to end this losing streak and stop the bleeding, we have some major work to do. I add on $200 to my stack, and after just a few orbits, I'm already into the game for $500 total. The next spot we get ourselves involved in is when I throw in the $4 under the gun straddle. There's 3 calls from the button, small blind, and big blind before I look down at pocket 6s. Could just check my option, but since I just called the $4, I figure I'm probably ahead of most of their range and I want to limit the field. So I raise the price of poker to $25, and after the button folds, the small blind goes all in for $75 total. Big blind folds, and I don't see how I'm ever beaten this spot given the action, so I snap call. Pot's increased to $160. We both turn over our hands and he shows ace-3 suited, which was our nemesis in our first hand of the day. Luckily, we get an amazing run out and scoop in a decent little profit to hopefully get us back on track and trend in the right direction. In this hand, there's one player that limps in early position, and I look down at king-queen offsuit. Never just calling for $2, so I raise it up to 10 and get action from the button and the limper. Going 3 ways to a pretty interesting flop of queen 10-9 rainbow, giving us top pair second best kicker. First player checks. Even though I have top pair, I like checking in the spot because it disguises my hand and I can get useful information from how our opponents bet on this type of board that favors their range as well. Button ends up throwing out a bet of $15 and the player in early position calls. I think raising would be a huge overplay, so I call as well. Pot's increased to $75 and the turn rolls out the 7 of diamonds. Early position checks, I check. Now the button checks it back, so I'm feeling pretty good we have the best hand. Hoping for a blank, that's exactly what we get in the 5 of diamonds. Early position now leads out for a bet of $25. Since we disguised our hand, I think it's possible he could be betting with worse. So I stick in the call, and the button gets out of the way. Early position rolls over queen 8 offsuit for a worse top pair, and we turn over the winner. We ended up winning a couple small pots after this hand and got our stack above the even mark, so I'm hoping we can keep it rolling in that direction. Moving on to this next one, where action gets folded to the button who just calls $2. Small blind calls, and I'm in the big blind and look down at pocket 7s. I'm pretty sure 7s is the best hand against these guys, so I raise to $12 and both players put in the chips. With $35 in the pot, the flop rolls out 10-7-5 with 2 clubs, giving us middle set on a super connected board. Small blind checks, and I throw out a bet of just $15 since our stacks were pretty shallow, and I figured I wouldn't have a problem getting the money in. Surprisingly, both players put in the chips, which I love to see. What made this hand even better is the 5 of hearts peels off on the turn, giving us the boat. Small blind checks, and a key mistake I see low stakes players make in this spot is to check it back since we have the hand locked up. I don't like this play because if someone has a flush or a straight draw, you want to get value now before the river bricks out and they can't call a bet. So I try to keep them in by betting a super small amount of $25, and I get what I want when both players call again, still going 3 ways to an interesting river in the ace of diamonds. Small blind checks, neither of these guys have much left in their stack, so I go all in hoping they have the nut flush draw and hit top pair. Button folds, but the small blind puts in his remaining $70. I turn over the boat, and he was way stronger than I thought when he rolls over 5-4 spades for turn trips. It sucks he didn't have more in his stack, but I'll never complain when money is pushed in my direction. We battled back and found ourselves with a nice little chip stack. I'm in early position and open 7-8 of diamonds to $10. This table must be tired of my shenanigans because 4 people end up putting in the call. With $50 in the pot, the flop comes out queen 6-5 rainbow with 1 diamond, giving us an open-ended straight draw. Whenever I'm in a super multi-way hand and I don't have an overpair or better, I like checking to see what develops. So I check, and it gets checked to the button who throws out a super small bet of $10. Big blind calls, and action gets folded over to me. Both of these guys only have about $70 left in their stack, so now I have to determine the best line to use. I could obviously call since I'm getting an amazing price, but that's not my favorite play. Since I'm the pre-flop aggressor, I have all the strong hands in my range, and when that's the case, I like going with the aggressive route and putting these guys to the test by going all in. I think we're deep enough to have some fold equity, and even if we get called, we still have plenty of outs to work with. Button tanks for a bit before side folding, and the big blind looks like he wants to call, but he ends up folding his hand as well. Button said he folded a weak queen, and the big blind had 7-6. So by taking the aggressive route, we scooped in $60 of profit with just 8 high. Next hand up, early position opens the action to $15 with no straddle, and that's the biggest open I've seen all day. Usually that indicates at least a pocket pair like 9s or better, an ace queen or ace king. 2 short stacks in late position end up putting in the call, and I'm in the small blind and look down at the jackasses, pocket jacks. Most of the time I'd put in the squeeze with this hand, but since I'm over 200 big blinds effective with a huge open against a tight player, I'm just gonna play it safe and put in the call. So I put in the $15, we're going 4 ways to a flop of Jack 10-3 rainbow, giving us top set. The original raiser checked out a turn, and I let the dealer know I didn't act yet. This is huge for me because I basically know he doesn't have an overpair, so instead of checking like I planned on doing, I decided to throw out a super small bet of $10. I had 2 super small short stacks to my right, so I didn't need any protection from them, and I figured the original raiser had a hand like pocket 9s or ace queen, so I didn't want them to fold. Original raiser puts in the call, and now cutoff jams for his remaining stack of $13. Button calls the $13, and both me and the original raiser are forced to call as well. So going to a turn with $110 in the pot, it peels off the 6 of clubs. Never slowing down, so I throw out another small bet of $35, and only the short stack in the small blind calls for his remaining $25. We both roll over our hands face up, and he shows king 9 of spades. We head to the river, and we fade the queen, giving us the winner, and we scoop in another decent little pot. In our last interesting hand of day 2, we built up a solid stack after being stuck early on in the session. We're looking to add on by raising ace-jack of spades to $15 over a few limps. Just the player to my right calls who just rebought after we stacked him, so we're looking to do it again. With $35 in the pot, we get an amazing flop of Jack 10-7 with 2 spades giving us top pair top kicker with the nut flush draw. Couldn't have asked for much more, so when he checks it over, I throw out a super small bet of $10 trying to keep him in with most of his range. He doesn't think $10 is enough, and now min clicks me to 20. If he had a deep stack, the correct play would just be to call and see a turn card since he's repping such a strong hand. Since he only has $105 left in his stack, I'm not here to play games and waste anybody's time with a hand I'm never folding, so I just say screw it and go all in. He snap calls, and we both roll over our hands and reveals my favorite hand in poker, which is Jack 10 suited for top 2 pair. Not what I wanted to see, but we still have some pretty decent equity since a spade or ace will give us the winner. With $285 in the pot, the turn isn't any help when it peels off the 6 of hearts, and the river 3 of clubs gives our opponent the winner. It sucks to flop such a monster and somehow lose a pretty decent pot. That's poker for you. Played for a little longer, but that was our last interesting hand of day 2, so let's get to the outro.
I'm glad we were able to bounce back after being stuck early and snap the losing streak. In for 500 and out for 702 for a solid $202 win.
First hand of day 3 is a wild one. Under the gun opens to just $5, and I'm next to act and look down at pocket deuces. Never raising here, so I call, and so do 4 other people. We hit bottom set on Jack 8 deuce all spade flop. Original raiser throws out a c-bet of $25. He's a pretty tight player, so I know for a fact he has an overpair. No point in slow playing this since there's so many bad turn cards, so I immediately raise him to 55. Figured I didn't have to go too big since stacks weren't that deep. Folds to a player in middle position who now goes all in for his remaining stack of $105. possible he has a flush, but I'm not too worried because I still have plenty of outs to improve. Folds to the original raiser, who now rejams for 167, and I snap call, bloating this pot up to $480 within just minutes of our session starting. I roll over my hand face up, hoping for the board to pair since I might be behind, but we get the 9 of hearts turn and the 6 of spades river, which is one of the worst cards in the deck. Middle position rolls over Jack 9 offsuit with the 9 of spades for a flush, and under the gun rolls over pocket queens with the queen of spades and scoops in this massive pot. We were a massive favorite on the flop against those specific hands, but couldn't fade the spade. And just like yesterday, we're stuck immediately and have to add on chips to get our stack up back to the max, so we're already into the game for $500. After reloading, we try our luck with 7-8 of hearts and raise it up to $10. Just the big blind puts in the call, so we're going heads up to a flop of ace-10-6 rainbow, giving us just a gut shot to the straight. Since I have the range advantage and have all the strong aces in my range, I start off with a standard c-bet of $10 and he quickly calls. Pot's doubled to $40 and the turn peels off the best card in the deck and the 9 of clubs, giving us the straight. He checks again, and now it's time to target all his top pairs. I throw out a 75% bet of $28, and without much hesitation he calls again. I think he's heavily weighted towards having an ace because 10x hands should probably fold by now. Headed off to a river, which is a pretty big blank, and the 3 of diamonds. Big blind checks again, has about $95 left in his stack for around a pot-sized bet. I could go all in and put him to the test, but one thing I've noticed throughout the years in playing 1-2 is people don't like calling off with all their chips. So it's important to think of a sizing any ace can call with. After a little thought, I settle on a bet of $65 and he goes deep in the tank, which is exactly what I wanted. Anytime your opponent takes a long time to make a decision, you know you made the perfect bet size. The big blind eventually puts in the call saying he has an ace, and I show him the goods. Glad we were able to win a pretty sizable pot after being stuck piles early on. For the next hour, we picked up some decent hands but missed completely, so our stack took a little hit. In this next one, I throw on the $4 button straddle. The hijack just calls the $4, which is usually a sign of weakness. Now the cutoff raises to just 13. Notice throughout the session he's been raising big with his strong hands, small with his weak ones, so I'm pretty confident he's at the bottom of his range. Folds to me on the button, and I look down at the worst hand ever created in 7-deuce offsuit. I should obviously fold this hand and move on, but I have a vlog to make and I need to entertain you guys with my play since my monotone voice ain't always gonna cut it. So instead of folding, I raise the price of poker to $45 with complete air, and it quickly folds to the hijack, who ruins our plans and goes all in for 47. I didn't think he'd limp and call off our 3-bet, or I obviously wouldn't have done this, but it's too late to bitch about it now. Folds to the original raiser, and after a mini tank he ends up folding, which is exactly what we expected. So there's over $100 in the pot, and we get to see a run out. We both turn over our hands, and we're up against ace-jack offsuit, so at least our cards are live. Flop comes out king-queen 6, which puts our opponent in amazing shape, but the miraculous deuce of diamonds turn gives us bottom pair horseshit kicker. River rolls off the king of clubs, pairing the board, and we somehow win a decent little pot with the worst hand ever created. I just got one thing to say.
Tell them to bring me my money.
After pulling off a victory in one of the dumbest hands I've ever played in, we now throw on the $4 under the gun straddle, and the button opens the action to $10. Big blind calls, and I get a little upgrade when I look down at the Cowboys, pocket kings, and put in the 3-bet to 35. Both players end up putting in the call, so with $105 in the pot, the flop comes out Jack 8-4 with 2 spades, giving us the overpair. Big blind checks, and on this board we have an easy value bet. I throw out a bet of $35 since I'm pretty sure we're way ahead. Once again, both players call, doubling the pot to 210. At this point, I put one of them on a flush draw and another on a jack. Keeping that in mind, we go to a terrible turn in the jack of clubs, pairing the top card and downgrading our overpair. To make matters worse, the big blind now leads out for a bet of $45, which didn't make much sense. If he had a jack, I figured he'd bet a lot bigger to protect against draws, so I'm not really buying what he's selling. When When that's the case, I'll always call and see what develops, but the problem is this isn't a heads up pot, and I still have the button to worry about. The button could easily have a jack in their hand, which would have me in miserable shape. So instead of calling to see what the button does, I just gladly fold and get the hell out of Dodge before I get myself in trouble. Action's on the button, and he ends up going all in, so we ended up escaping disaster. Under the gun tank folded. The button is a close friend of ours and later told me he had ace-jack of diamonds and turned trips on us. So correct fold on our part, which I'm happy about, but losing money with big pairs sucks. Next hand up, under the gun limps, small blind calls. I'm in the big blind and look down at pocket tens. Never checking here, so I raise them up to $12 to make sure I get action, and both players put in the call. Flop comes out 6-5 deuce rainbow, giving us the overpair. Now the small blind leads into us for $25. This is the same player who just opened to $5 with queens earlier, so he's pretty tight. I'm putting him on either an overpair or 6-5 and not much else. Could raise in this spot, but if he has a pair worse than mine, I don't want him to fold. And if he flopped better than me, I don't want to value on myself. So I just call, and under the gun gets out of the way. Heads up to a turn, and we see the 8 of hearts making this board a lot more connected. Pot's sitting at $85, and now he sizes up to $60. Now I'm a little concerned he has me beat, because this player is usually pretty passive, but I think folding here would be too nitty, especially in position. So I call again, increasing this pot to $205. We're hoping for a blank, but it peels off the ace of diamonds. Our opponent seemed a little scared of this card because he checks it over to us. I don't really see a point in betting since I don't think a worse hand can call a bet with this scare card. So I check it back. He rolls over pocket sevens for the one hand we can beat. We scoop in a decent little pot to get us back in the right direction. Pay attention to this next hand if you want to be a winning poker player. I'm in middle position and open ace-queen offsuit to $10 and get called from the cutoff and button. Going 3 ways to a solid flop of ace-jack-7 with 2 spades, giving us top pair second best kicker. Since there's a ton of draws and worse hands to get value from, I throw out a standard half pot bet of $15. Now the button raises to $40. In the few sessions I've played with him, he's been rather snug, so I'm putting him on a pretty good hand that probably has us beat. If we take a second to think about the situation, would a 1-2 player ever be raising with a hand like ace-10 here against the pre-flop aggressor? Probably not, especially since I have the ace of spades in my hand. He can't have top pair with a nut flush draw. So basically I'm putting him on ace-jack, ace-7, or pocket 7 since I think he 3-bet jacks pre-flop. The obvious play would be to fold given that info, but this player is solid and knows how to get away from a good hand. So since I only have to call $35 more to win a pot of 110, I decided to float and either hit a queen to give us the best hand, or use the ace of spades as a bluff card and put our opponent in a miserable spot. So I call, increasing the pot to $110, and the turn isn't great and the 8 of hearts not really changing anything. I check, he continues betting for $50. At this point, our plan is dead. The only time you want to go through with the bluff is probably when you have a couple streets to work with. Since the turn ruined our plans, we just wave the white flag and fold. He's nice enough to show his hand, reveals a7 of clubs for 2 pair, and I'm glad we made the right play. It's important to have a plan on every step of the way to try and steal the pot regardless if you have the best hand or not. We're stuck around $180 on the session and nearing the end, so we're hoping to somehow land a profit. What better way to do it than getting dealt my favorite hand in poker, which is none other than Jack-10 suited. Hijack opens to just $6, which is a sizing tell I've noticed, so when it folds to me in the small blind, I decide to put him to the test and raise the price of poker to $23. Big blind ends up cold calling. If you watch my vlogs, you know that he either has a pocket pair or Broadway hand almost every single time. And despite getting an amazing price to continue, the original raiser ends up folding, so our sizing tell was spot on. Going heads up to a flop of a7-3 with 2 spades giving us the flush draw. Pretty happy with the flop because we have all the ace-king and ace-queens in our range more often than him, so I'm more than happy to start off with a c-bet bluff of $20. He quickly calls, which I wasn't surprised with because most of his range shouldn't believe me just yet. Pots increased to $95, and we're headed to a turn and see the beautiful queen of spades giving us the flush. Now it's time to pray and hope that he cold called with an ace, and he also has a spade in his hand. So I don't slow down and throw out a value bet of $60. Expecting to still get a call from all the aces in his range for that size, but now our opponent doesn't call. Instead, he jams all in and we snap call. This increased the pot to over $450, which is pretty big for 1-2. We have the second nut flush and a redraw to the royal flush. We both roll over our hands and he shows king-queen offsuit with the king of spades, so not only do we have a good amount of cards to fade, but our dream of hitting a royal flush is impossible. But that's neither here nor there. All we're looking to do is fade the 7 remaining spades. If we can, we'll finally be up on the session for the first time all day, but if we can't, we'll be stuck piles. Dealer burns a card and throws out a black card, but luckily it's a club and we scoop in this massive pot, putting us in the positive. We played for a bit longer and won a couple small pots, but nothing significant happened, so let's get to the outro.
Could have been a massive day if our sets and overpairs held up, but at least we were able to salvage a win. In for 500, now for 565 for a decent little profit of $65 to end the week.
As for this week in poker, we played 9 hours and 30 minutes of 1-2 and lost a total of $98. Kind of a dud of a week, but on the bright side, we did manage to snap a 3-session losing streak and win back-to-back sessions, which we could hope to continue into next week. As for our 1-2 stats on the year, we played a total of 36 hours and 50 minutes, profited $1,420 for an hourly win rate of $38.55. Pretty happy with where our 1-2 results are at because I've limited the swings by not making any major mistakes. I wish our 1-3 stats looked just as pretty, but after a horrific week of losing $1,444 in just 2 sessions, brings it down to a profit of just $176 and 30 hours and 30 minutes of play. The swings are crazy in this game because it plays more like a 2-5 since it's matched a stack, so I just gotta stick to my game and try not to overbluff. Combining these two stats, we played a total of 67 hours and 20 minutes of live poker in 2025 and have profited $1,596 for an hourly win rate of $23.70. We're just under our goal of $25 per hour on the year, but hopefully with a good week of 1-3 we could get over the hump and give ourselves some breathing room. Thanks for watching, and as always, I hope you guys run good at the tables, and I'd appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button to help me reach my year-end goal of 20,000 subscribers.